Jenny McCarthy Show.
Oh! Welcome back to the Jenny McCarthy Show. I'm Jenny McCarthy Wahlberg. All my lovely book readers out there, heads up. Another great book. Everything is fucked. It's so fun to say. A book about hope. What a juxtaposition. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm great.
Mark Manson is back. His first book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Blogger, internet entrepreneur. Congratulations on book number 2.
Thank you.
You're on a roll, buddy.
I guess so. I'm on a fucking roll.
Why use fuck in the book titles?
Well, the first one, it was conscious decision to like get a lot of attention, and this one, it's like, okay, now you're a brand. So
right.
So the publisher kind of just
Went with it.
up.
Initially, were they first like, or were they open to it? The first book with the.
What's funny is that it was a very difficult debate that was had about using it in the first book.
I bet.
And now there's like 15 books with it.
Exactly. You're ahead of your time, buddy.
Exactly.
So if everything is truly fucked, how can there be hope, Mark?
Well, the little spoiler alert is everything's always been fucked, and it's always gonna be fucked, and you need things to be fucked to have hope.
Right.
If everything was perfect, then you'd have nothing to look forward to.
It would be so boring.
Exactly.
I try to tell my son, I'm like, you wouldn't know happiness if there wasn't sadness.
Yeah.
And everything is a lesson, so to speak. So how do you get through the fucked times?
Well, it's I think we're all working on that right now. But I have some arguments that I make in the book, regarding social media and our relationship to technology, our relationship to politics, and I think really mostly people just need to chill the fuck out.
And what do you think? What's your perspective on why? Because it's a collective type of anger.
Yes.
And bullying that's happening, the mob that comes out and attacks, and it's a collective one, so it's stronger and meaner and bigger. Why is that happening?
What's fascinating too is that it's happening on both sides of the political spectrum, and it's happening globally. So I was traveling all these other countries to promote subtle art, and I'd see the same awful bullshit, and everywhere I went.
It's almost like we're all connected.
Yeah. Well, it's for me, it really suggests that there's something about media and technology that's changed. And the argument that I make is that essentially what we've done is we've traded out having a few very high quality relationships with having lots and lots of low quality relationships.
That's absolutely right.
And when you do that, there are psychological repercussions for that. You don't satiate your human need for connection and relationship and intimacy the same way that you do, spending a lot of time face to face with somebody. Replacing one good friend with like 100 Facebook friends is just it's a recipe for disaster.
So then is there something inside of us that like turns on a switch that makes us mean? Why couldn't it be filled with then love?
Because it's so when you remove those high quality relationships, people start to I call them crises of hope, but it's essentially just depression, anxiety. People are like, well, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like Nothing seems to matter. Nobody seems to actually care, what I'm doing. And so people compensate for that by throwing themselves into causes, finding their little subgroup online, basically becoming the mob, because that gives them some sense of meaning and hope in their lives.
Got it. So they attach themselves onto a story.
Yes.
And then put themselves in a bubble, literally. So anytime they've gone elsewhere, they're like, you don't agree with my point.
Yep. Yeah, and it's really fascinating too, because it's not. A lot of times it's not even organized. Like I saw this interesting video a couple weeks ago talking about how conspiracy theories have changed. It used to be, everybody had a conspiracy theory about like JFK.
Right.
So there was like a very important political moment. Now you get stuff like Pizzagate, like stuff it doesn't even make sense. It's just like, oh, they're pedophiles at this pizza shop. Like let's go get them.
Right.
And it's this people just kind of collect in these groups and they spin up these stories that make them feel like heroes and give them hope, essentially.
And maybe feeling like they belong to something.
Exactly.
Because we all want to feel like we belong somewhere. Even like weirdos want to find other weirdos.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then the anger balls, though, collectively have manifested themselves around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite scary a little bit if we don't start waking up to that realization.
Yes.
Because this younger generation doesn't know what it's like to not have it.
Yes.
We know what it's like to have awkward moments in person and have to say
Yes.
things to people in person. But God knows then what our future is going to look like. Are we all then fucked?
Yeah, well, we're always fucked, but
But really fucked.
but it is really concerning because this is such a fundamental part of what makes us healthy people. You know, is having those awkward interactions. You know, getting your heart broken a little bit like that. That is actually what creates a sense of intimacy and belonging in your life. And people are just not getting that.
Mm-mm.
You know, one of the most horrifying studies that I came across when I was doing research for this book. They ran a survey, I think back in the 1980s, and they asked people, this was in the U.S., they asked people, they said, how many people do you have in your life that you feel like you could tell a personal secret? And the most common answer was 3 people. They ran the same survey, I think like 2011, 2012. Most common answer was 0.
Really? That's an
0.
interesting study.
That's fascinating, right?
Yes.
Like,
No
what
one.
does that say?
Oh my God, that's really sad.
It is.
I mean, sometimes, and I can speak from my own journey, that, you know, those rock bottom moments were so valuable for me.
They're the most important.
They really are.
They are.
So the big question is that a future that we can see for everyone that it happens, it's going to happen for? Like, will people wake up? I mean, we can only hope, I guess.
Yeah. But the irony is that you know, it's part of the problem. So I did kind of the same thing with this book that I did with Subtle Art. You know, Subtle Art, I think I created a title that people, you know, would walk through the airport and be like, oh, I wish I didn't give a fuck. Like, I'll buy this. And then you start reading it and you're like, oh, shit. I have to give a fuck about oh, God, okay. And I kind of did the same thing with this because I feel like a lot of people are struggling with hope right now. And they're struggling, you know, both with like our politics, but also, you know, just like the way the world's going in general. And so I wanted to write a book that, you know, people would buy it. It's like, oh, I want some hope. I need to find hope somewhere. And then you start reading it and you realize that it's that desperate need to find hope in your life that is creating a lot of the problems, that is like leading to those anger balls, as you said.
Yes.
And that we need to be a little bit more skeptical of like what we put all of our faith into.
Yeah, what we put out there.
Yeah.
Do you dive into, because I talk about it all the time, but like finding that space in between, finding the thoughtfulness before action.
Yeah.
Teaching people that maybe take a moment.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, I think there's, you know, one of the problems in general is just we're losing the ability to sit with pain. We're just, and part of it is just we're being enabled. You know, the technology makes it so easy to kind of just knee jerk to everything, and distract yourself, avoid stuff, or just lash out at somebody. And as a result, we're losing that ability to just sit with something that sucks for a while.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's like where the magic is.
It really is. I mean, I learned that from my own life, but I used to, like say you've got to, and I don't know where it came from, but in order to heal it, you got to feel it.
Yep.
And so when I have those like, feelings where I just want to crawl out of my body and I'm like reaching for a drink or the internet or something, I go like, just fucking feel it. Because I realize that by numbing it, you're putting a pause on your spiritual development. And how many of us and how many people do we know that have done that or have turned to drugs or alcohol and then recovered by age 40, but you're spiritually still stuck in college?
Yes, absolutely.
It's amazing how your spiritual development suffers so much anytime that you put a pause on your development or feeling.
Yeah, and it's, you know, one of the arguments I make in the book too is that what we're seeing is people are basically just not maturing. You know, it's if you look at like people who are the problems of people who are like, you know, in their 20s or 30s, it's the problems that teenagers had 50 years ago. And if you look at people in their 40s and 50s, they're acting like 20-year-olds, you know, and it's I think there's something that's just elongating that maturity process. And I think you described it pretty well. It's like when you're constantly able to distract yourself and avoid the difficult lessons and avoid the awkward moments, because those awkward moments is what makes you mature.
That's right.
And so if you're not having those, then you're just going to kind of have this Peter Pan mindset.
100%. And then you find yourself in relationships and playing games you did in high school.
Oh, yeah.
The jealousy games, the silent treatment.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm sorry, we're in our 40s. Are we not past that already? Grow up. What is let me plug the book again. Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. By the way, all of my friends got your other book and literally drove me crazy because they got it at different times. And they're like, you have to get this author in. I'm like, we've had him on. But
dude,
now,
you were one of the first, man.
Yeah.
It's funny because the F word, nobody wanted to touch me when the book came out. Like, nobody wanted to have me on. And you were one of the first, actually.
Yes.
So credit to you.
Fuck yes. We are good for something. You were referred to something as uncomfortable truth.
Yes.
What is that?
The uncomfortable truth is just the realization that in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the universe, we're very insignificant and our actions have no consequences. that we're all gonna die. No, like nobody's gonna miss us. Our whole species is gonna be wiped out one day, and like that's just the truth. But we avoid that.
So is it kind of like, are you trying to also say don't sweat the small stuff because it doesn't matter?
Well, so this is the funny thing about the uncomfortable truth, and I think anybody who's gone through depression is like struggled with this of just like, well, nothing fucking matters. Like, I'm going to die and everybody I know is going to die. You can either approach it as a very depressing thing or it can become a very liberating thing, because it's like, if we're all going to die and nobody's going to remember any of this shit, there's no reason to not love fiercely. There's no reason to not act courageously. There's no reason to not have integrity.
Take risks.
Yes. And so it's you can look at it either as something to despair about, or you can look at it as something that can liberate you.
Hopefully liberate. That's
Yeah.
what I feel like. So do we have control over everything or anything?
Anything? Apparently not. 'Cause
What is your philosophy on that? People you have destiny. It's it's mapped out for you, but you have free will. Where's your head on that?
I think free will is it's something that we experience subjectively. So I think it's ultimately our experience is that we're choosing everything, and that's what matters. Even if we're not really in control of our own choices, even if we're kind of just it's just a bunch of dominoes that are getting knocked over. We experience our life as a series of choices, and so it's important to think in terms of choices.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about people who are stuck? I've met a lot of people who are like, in their 40s, I mean, whatever age you are, who just feel like they're at a crossroad. They're not sure if they should get a divorce. They don't know if they should switch jobs. They don't know. They're stuck, just stuck. What is your advice to them?
I think, it depends on what they feel stuck about. But I mean, generally speaking, I think, life's short. And so the bigger the risk you need to take, even if you fall flat on your face, it's going to be an incredible learning experience. So I just err on the side of risk. If I ever feel stuck, I just kind of think to myself, it's like, okay, what is kind of a drastic thing that would really shake this up? And it might hurt a lot, but at least it'll be shaken up. At least I'll be moving again.
That's right. Taking some type of action.
Yeah.
And maybe asking yourself questions. What is the fear?
Yeah.
What is that underlining fear? Fear and guilt gets people so stuck.
Yes. And it's funny too, because people who are stuck, they're always like, they're like, oh, I don't want to quit my job because then, what if I don't find another one? I'll be really unhappy. And it's like, well, you're already fucking unhappy. Right. So like, you're losing nothing. You could be you could be unhappy doing something new or unhappy doing the same old thing. So
that's pretty funny. Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. You do talk about money in the book. Mm-hmm. What is the relationship about money?
I argue that money is essentially, it's just it's kind of a medium that represents people's feelings about things. So I have a thing called the feelings economy, which is essentially that. Ooh, I like that. Everybody spends money on things that make them feel good. people are very irrational about like what we spend money on, what choices we make. And so if you kind of like extrapolate that out across a population, money accrues to people who are more able to manipulate people's perceptions or feelings. And manipulate is like a loaded word. It sounds very evil, but it's, you know, it can be influence as well.
Exactly.
So it's
is it deceiving though? Are you? I mean, I understand what you mean. Where it's not necessarily you can look at it like a bad thing, but then, how are you supposed? I mean, are you supposed to do some actual spiritual work then on how you spend your money?
Well, so yeah, so I mean, money. Then you can look at money as essentially just an extension of your emotional health.
Got it. Oh, that's such a great way of saying it.
So if you're like constantly broke and spending money on stupid shit, that says something about where you are in terms of your relationship with yourself.
Right. And wanting a quick high sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's the numbing thing.
100%.
And so it's learning to, I guess, discipline yourself financially, make smart purchasing decisions. It's the same thing as, you know, learning to be patient in an argument with your spouse. You know, it's the same muscle, essentially.
It is the same muscle. I love the way you define that. I'm just thinking about how these shoes I thought would make myself feel better. And I've just been in so much pain all day. I'm like, what was I thinking? I do want to bring up, I still have some time. What about religion? Because it was such a huge factor in my life growing up and for other people's. But I feel like there's transition and there's people waking up to spirituality and maybe losing labels. But where do you stand on that?
It's hard to write a book about hope without talking about religion. But one of the points I wanted to make, like if you look at the data, you know, 50 years ago, like 95% of the population was religious. They were like Christian or Jewish or whatever. Today it's like 60 maybe. Back then it was, I think, like 70-80% of people attended church regularly. Now it's like 30%. And so there a lot of people talk about the decline in religiosity. But one of the arguments I make is I say, I think what's happened is it's not people are becoming less religious. They're just transferring their faith onto more worldly things. So if you look at how religious our behavior is around politics now, for instance, how religious our behavior is around brands, if you think of like Apple or Nike, how religious our behavior is around like celebrities. So it's not that we're becoming less religious. It's just that we're worshiping
That's
different
fascinating.
things.
So those crusades are turning into crusades in politics.
Yeah, which is a huge problem because for a democracy to function, you have to like listen to people you don't like.
Right.
But it's like if this is turned into your little mini religion that, you know, you're on your crusade and this is what gives you hope, you're just not going to listen to people.
Right. You don't listen to me or you don't like what I have to say, off with your head. That's what it kind of feels like.
Exactly.
I hope people read this book and we can all kind of wake up and, you know, have the hope that you talk about. Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. So it's out now. Mark Manson, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me back.
Love your books. Can't wait to finish this one. We'll be right back, guys.
Thanks.
Jenny McCarthy Show. Oh!